Hi, in this video I'm going to explain how you can get a EU settlement scheme family permit as a non-European citizen to join a European citizen family member of yours who's living in the UK. So we're going to go through the diagrams. I'm going to explain this to you in full. This is part one of this video series on the subject. Now the starting point is where we are in relation to Brexit. So the UK left the European Union on the 31st of January 2020, and we're currently in this transitional period during the course of 2020, but that is going to be coming to an end, and the deadline or the relevant time is the 31st of December 2020. Now that's the deadline, as I'm going to explain, for you or your European family member in terms of living in the UK. I'll explain that in a minute, but there's also a relevant deadline in relation to relationships. So I'll explain in a moment. And the next deadline we've got to be aware of, the forefront of our minds, has got to be the 30th of June 2021. And that's the deadline for applications. That's a deadline. The deadline for applications for pre-settled status or settled status. So what does this mean for you personally before we come to your family members? Now, if you're a European citizen, basically the latest that you can come to the UK is going to be ahead of the deadline of the 31st of December 2020. So if you're not in living in the UK, or if you can't prove your residence in the UK before that date, then you will not be entitled to settled status, or pre-settled status rather, and you will therefore have to apply under the new immigration rules that will apply thereafter. So as a European national, the latest that you can show that you're residing in the UK is by that date. So that is a deadline. Now, if you're already residing in the UK, then you only really need to worry about the 30th of June 2021 deadline. But for everyone else, including those who are thinking, European nationals who are thinking of coming to the UK to settle here, then you want to do so before 31st December 2020, but ideally long before then. Now, what documents do you need to show, just in terms of yourself, first of all, leaving aside any non-European family members that are coming with you? Well, the documents that you need to show are pretty minimal. And this is where the immigration regime at the moment is quite generous. So you only need to provide one piece of evidence to cover each month or any longer period of time. So what that means is you only need, in theory, a mobile telephone bill. As absurd as that may sound, that is the effect of the guidance currently. So you would just need to start living in the UK by the 31st of December 2020 and be able to prove that through a mobile telephone bill as an absolute minimum. Now, I use that because that's often the easiest contract for one to secure, because you can do that sometimes online, but usually in store, subject to corona crisis. You would be able to do that. But let me give you some examples of the other evidence that you could provide. So this is the evidence that covers shorter periods of time. These documents count as evidence for 1 month if they have a single date on. They can be used to cover a longer period of time if they have a start and end date covering a month or longer. So this is another easy one. Bank statements showing payments received or spending in the UK. Landline or mobile telephone, TV or internet bill showing a UK address. Domestic bill. A letter from your GP, again, that's a relatively easy one. Passport stamp confirming entry at the UK border. Now, for you as a European national, you're not going to get a stamp at the UK border, so that usually at any rate, so that that's not a reliable one. But this is another low-hanging fruit, if you like. Used travel ticket confirming you entered the UK from another country. So the travel ticket just by itself is deemed to be adequate evidence, and then an invoice for work you've done in the UK, that's a different point. So the most readily available, the easiest of these to be able to show as a European national, is likely to be a mobile telephone bill or a passport stamp, as I say, if applicable, or possibly best of all of them is a used travel ticket. Now, obviously, I would not. Oh, sorry. After that, we can't leave out bank statements showing payments received or spending in the UK. That's another easy one. Now, that's the absolute minimum, but I would recommend obviously having more than one of these, and ideally several of them to prove your residence as European citizen if you're coming to live in the UK before the 31st of December. So that covers you, and if you were to get that evidence and be in the UK before 31st of December, then you could then wait until 2025, and at the end of 2025 you would simply apply for settled status. So again, here's the government guidance. You'll usually get settled status if you started living in the UK by 31st of December 2020 and lived in the UK for a continuous 5-year basis. And continuous residence here means at least 6 months in a 12-month period, but you can have a 12-month break for an important reason. And that's, again, quite generously construed to include study or overseas work. So that covers you. So that's the absolute latest you could leave it is December of this year, and you'd come into the UK, establish your residence, secure one of those bits of evidence, and then you would secure pre-settled status. You can make an application through the app. I've got a video on this YouTube channel with a walkthrough of that. And then that covers you, and you will be on a pathway to settled status in 2025. Now, how about your family? Now, I hope you haven't minded me going through that, because you need to cover off yourself before coming on to your family. So when we come to your family, I just want to deal firstly with, and this is going to be the focus of this video, on unmarried partners. And in my last video, I showed the sort of evidence that you would need to demonstrate a relationship with an unmarried partner if you haven't been living together. Now let's just zoom in on this. So you can apply for the EU settlement scheme family permit if you're the close family member of an EEA or Swiss national and they have settled or pre-settled status under the EU settlement scheme. That's why I started with this pre-settled status point. You must be a close family member such as a spouse, civil partner, dependent child or dependent parent. And again, I'm going to be making focus videos on those categories. But for the EA family permit, you can apply for extended family members as well. And so the bottom line is, at the moment, you can't apply under the EU settlement scheme for a unmarried partner. And what this means is you will need to now apply for an EEA family permit for your unmarried partner from outside of Europe. However, if you miss that, then you can apply under the EU settlement scheme after the 31st of December. Now, I'll just explain what I mean with reference to the legislation. So the legislation here is Appendix EU family permit to the immigration rules. And it sets out the basis on which a non-EEA citizen can apply for an EU settlement scheme family permit. And what it provides is this. It's granted for 6 months, and you've got to meet the eligibility requirements. And they are that you're a non-EEA citizen, that the applicant is a family member of a relevant EEA citizen, that the relevant EEA citizen is in the UK or will be travelling to the UK within 6 months, and it doesn't include anyone who holds a EEA family permit already. And if the family member of a relevant EEA citizen is defined as follows: either a spouse, where you were married before December of this year, a durable partner, but in the definition of durable partner, it says that your partnership was formed and was durable before the specified date, and the partnership remains durable at the date of the application, and the date of the application is after the specified date. And then it goes on to say, it goes on to reference the child or dependent parent and the child or dependent parent of a spouse or civil partner. So essentially the position for a non-European unmarried partner of a European national living in the UK is that there's two options: the EEA family permit or the EU settlement scheme. Now, in the next video, I will be covering other types of family members, including children. I hope that's helpful. In the meantime, stay safe, and I will see you in the next live stream.